This episode of the WP Builds podcast is brought to you by GoDaddy Pro, the home of managed WordPress hosting that includes free domain, SSL, and 24/7 support. Bundle that with the Hub by GoDaddy Pro to unlock more free benefits to manage multiple sites in one place, invoice clients, and get 30% off new purchases. Find out more at go.me/WP Builds. Androids. How are you doing, Mark?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. We're back in our normal continents of the world.
We are.
I've stayed in Europe the entire time. You're back. Did you have a safe journey? Did you enjoy WordCamp Europe?
I loved WordCamp Europe. It was great. Got to meet lots and lots of people. Lost my voice, which is always the way. Went to lots of events, after events, many late mornings, so early mornings.
It was a fabulous event, though. Mark and I did quite a lot of hanging out, actually, as it happens.
We did.
It turns out he's quite a good swimmer. That's all I'm going to say.
You're quite good at snorkeling.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. We're here. We're going to do the 5th of 6 of the WS Form demos. As I've said in the past, we're just here. If you happen to be here, we're on a new platform. I'm not entirely sure how the whole chat thing works. Hopefully it is working. But if you want to just drop us a message in if you are here, that's great. We'll try to add that question onto the stream. If nobody shows up, so be it. We'll treat it as a piece of live recording content, and we'll put it on the WP Builds website. We've done quite a few of these episodes already. This is, am I right in saying this is the 5th one, right? This is the 5th in our series.
Yes, this is the 5th one.
So we're getting slightly more complicated each time. The first one was form building basics. You can find all of these at wpbuilds.com. If you go to the archives menu and then click demos, you'll see them all there. And then we moved on to building interactive forms. Then step 3, if you like, was preventing form spam, deliverability, and form efficiency. Last time we met, step 4, custom field plugin integration. And now we're on to WooCommerce, what we can do with WS Form and WooCommerce. You all set?
I'm all set. Let's take it away.
Let's take it away. Let me share the screen. Ooh, you got slides and all sorts.
Yeah, this one we haven't got many slides on this one. This is going to be a lot of hands-on stuff, I think.
Okay.
But, let's just do a quick reminder of the special offer we're doing with WP Builds. So if you go to wpbuilds.com/link and then use coupon code WP Build, you will get 20% off any edition. And hopefully it doesn't pop up on your screen when you do that.
Yay!
All right, so basically our WooCommerce integration enables you to put a form on a WooCommerce product and lets you then build a customizable product, and you can put any of the WS Form fields on that product. So we're going to run through a few things today. First of all, how to assign a form to a product and how to do that properly. Just very quickly, how to edit the form and manipulate that form. Customizing product pricing, so you can actually use the e-commerce fields in WS Form to manipulate product pricing in WooCommerce. Choosing which fields appear in the cart, so you can actually choose which of the custom fields you have on the product actually appear in the cart when it's added to the cart. We're going to talk about data grid column mapping very briefly. We'll come on to that later on. Running actions. So we went through actions in the previous episodes, but things like sending an email or maybe pushing something to Salesforce or running a WordPress hook, that can actually all be controlled by WooCommerce order statuses. So we'll go on to that. And then there's some variables as well that you can use in your email templates or other integrations. Things like maybe the billing address or the order amount can be used as variables in other parts of the system. A lot of what we're talking about today is going to be available at this address here, so woocommerce.wsform.com. That's the main site that we have, where we've got some demos, we've got links off to the actual product itself. So the WooCommerce add-on for WS Form is actually a WooCommerce extension in the WooCommerce marketplace. So that's where you get that. So we'll get that PowerPoint out of the way, and I'll just show you very quickly that site. So this is the woocommerce.wsform.com site. And on this site, you've actually got some demo products that you can have a look at. We'll have a look at some of those in a moment. You've also got a link to get WS Form Pro. You've got the link to the actual extension itself, the documentation for it as well. So this is the page on the WooCommerce site itself. And there's a nice little video on here if you want to have a look at it and learn more about the functionality of that extension. You can see that in this YouTube video. And this just gives you an overview of everything that extension does and some of the stuff that we'll be going through today. Now they do have a documentation link on here. It's a little bit hidden away, but there's a support accordion here on the right. And if you click on view documentation, that will take you to this page. And this is where all the juicy stuff is. So if you get stuck with anything on the WooCommerce integration, it's all documented here. We're not going to go through all that right now. Okay, so let's just have a look at some of the demos of what it can actually do, and then I'll show you how some of that stuff's done. So we'll start with some basic stuff first. So maybe a donate product first. So this is a very, very simple example of putting a WS Form on a product. So everything kind of here is all standard WooCommerce product page.
Right.
And then below that, this is actually a WS form here, the amount, and indeed actually the add to cart button as well. So the nice thing about the WooCommerce extension is it enables you to control where the quantity and the add to cart button actually is on that product page. In fact, you can put more than one on the page if you want to.
Nice.
So if you have your add to cart down here and you actually want to move it, then you can actually do that with the extension. And this is a very simple form. We've just got a price field on here, and whatever's entered into that price field becomes the price that's added to the cart. So you can use it for a donate product. So let's have a look at something that's a little bit more complicated. Let's go to a multi-tab form. When we spoke about tabs in some of the previous sessions that we did, but this then shows you actually putting a multi-step form into a product. So again, this part here is your WooCommerce product. This one actually has the regular add to cart button from WooCommerce at the bottom, but everything else is a WS form. So you see we can actually tab through within the product itself.
Nice.
If I fill this out, we've got a product bar going up. I always wondered where test actually is. So you can work your way through. You've got select options, you've got drop downs. Now you'll notice at the bottom we've actually got a total, options, and subtotal. So the subtotal is actually the product price. We've got that set to 0 on this one. Options is whatever we've selected on the form. So you'll notice when I drag this up, that option amount changes. And then the total is the amount that would actually get added to the cart. And then we can actually put a signature on there as well if you want, anything you want. Now you'll notice now that I've actually filled out all those fields and we've got a progress bar of 100%. The add to cart button has now come alive.
Nice.
If I clear that signature, you can't actually click on it. So you get the add to cart button is enabled or disabled based upon whether that form is actually fully validated or not. Just prevents people from clicking and adding it to the cart before they've filled out everything that you want from them.
That's really great. Just little things. Little things.
Little things, yeah. Conditional logic can be used as well. So this is an example of showing some fields when we choose certain options. So if I do spouse or child, you'll see we get different information. So this is using the video where we talked about making forms dynamic using conditional logic. So we're actually using that within a product itself, and that makes the product dynamic as well. And again, we've obviously got to fill out everything on that form to get that add to cart to appear. Then you can do some more advanced stuff as well. And we have a tutorial for this on the site, and maybe we'll talk about that later. But this is an example of a t-shirt and being able to actually dynamically adjust the t-shirt on the left-hand side here. So this is actually an SVG. And an SVG is a format that enables you to work with both graphics and vector graphics as well. And again, so from here to here, we're looking at a regular WooCommerce form, and I can choose a variation. So it does work with variant products as well as simple products. And then below that, we've then got the form. And what we can do, we can actually use this is actually a radio here with different colors. When I click on that, it's actually changing that SVG. And that's actually done with a little bit of JavaScript. Maybe later on we'll show you how that's done, but it's actually changing a screen layer over a picture of a white t-shirt. You can even choose what you want on the t-shirt, so you could even do like custom text and type whatever you want on that t-shirt.
Oh no. Yeah.
So, yeah, you can change
Yay!
the font
Look
size.
at
There
that.
you go. Yeah, yeah. So you can do whatever you want with it. This is a very basic example, but but you can see how the form can be used to interact with that. We're actually using the conditional logic on this as well. If you look at the word commerce on that T-shirt, when it
It's
gets
changing,
light,
right?
it's
It's
dark.
going white.
When it goes dark,
Yeah.
it goes white. Yeah, yeah. So you can use all the conditional logic and all the features of WS Form to interact with whatever you've got. Again, I can put a signature on there to approve that, and then hit add to cart.
When you say the conditional logic for that word commerce, so we can see at the moment the
Yeah,
word commerce is a black color.
yeah,
Are you taking some sort of, are you doing a measurement against the hue of the
yeah,
background color on the SVG? In this case, it's a pale purple, and at some point
yeah,
it flips over and says, "Okay, that's now, I don't know, we've reached saturation point.
yeah.
Change it to the other logo." Okay,
Yeah, I think it does it on 50% lightness or
50%.
something
Right,
like
right,
that.
right.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, I can show you that quickly. So if we actually add a form, go back to our familiar layout editor. I'll just show you quickly how that's done. So on that particular one, we've just got basically a color field, right? And then maybe we could add a text field just to demonstrate how this works. If we go into conditional logic, and we'll add a condition. So we go if color, and then we can do lightness greater than 50%.
Right.
Then you do something.
With
So
the text, yeah.
yeah. So we could just do a very simple, greater than 50, less than 50. Now, what we're actually doing on that particular product page is we're running some JavaScript to modify that particular element in the SVG. But that's all explained in the tutorial for that, and we'll show that later on. So let's have a look and see how you actually create a product with a form on it. So I've got a page here where we're adding a new product in WooCommerce, and
we're just in plain old Woo here, right? Free version of Woo will work.
Yeah. So we just do test product in here. You can put a base product price in if you want, so we'll put $5 in there. You don't have to; it would default to 0 if you didn't put something in there. But you'll notice now we've got a WS Form tab under the product data section. And when we click on that, because we don't have a form assigned to it currently, it gives us a bunch of templates that we can work with. These are just some sample forms that we can work with. You can either choose this, or you can opt with a completely blank form and build whatever you want on that product. But on this one, let's just go ahead and we'll choose a multi-tab form. And what that's now doing is that's going to create the form in WS Form. It's going to publish it, and it's now assigned it to that particular product. So what we'll do is we'll publish that. And let's preview that. Open a new window. And there you go. So there's the multi-tab form on that product. So it's that simple to add a form to a product. Now, you're probably going to want to edit that. So if you go back into that WS Form tab and we click on Edit Form, what it's now going to do is going to take you to the layout editor in WS Form.
Right,
and we can now modify
that.
Yeah, so we can modify that any way that we want. I want to show you a few things that are slightly different in the layout editor now that we're actually coming in from a WooCommerce product. So you'll notice at the top, we've got a link here to the product. That enables us to bounce back to that product while we're editing. So we can basically bounce between the two things. So we'll just click on edit to go back again. Now, the way that a form is assigned to a product, that's actually done under form settings. And then we go to Woo here. You'll notice that it has automatically assigned it to that test product. Now, you may have a form that you want to assign to many products. You might just not want to set it to that particular one product we've added. So you can actually assign products to categories and to tags or individual products. So to do that, you just click on Add here. You just choose the category, and then off you go. So it's very, very simple to assign products to multiple different products. You can also exclude as well. So if you wanted to assign a form to everything but, then you can use these exclude settings here as well. Below that, we've got some other settings for how this form is presented on that product. So first of all, on the actual catalog pages, that's where it's listing all of the products. So if we have a look at, let's go back to here, and we'll go back to the home page. So the button that you actually click on here to get to that product, you'll see this one's got the word donated as opposed to select options. So that is actually set up here on the button label. So you can modify that by just changing that setting. In terms of the price, you can actually hide the price if you want. So that's the default WooCommerce price that's shown at the top of a product page, or you can just leave that and it will just show it. You can actually put prefixes and suffixes around that price. These are some of the features that when you're building a WooCommerce site that you would sometimes have to install an add-on for to get to do it. So we've built this all into it. And then you'll see we've got some hide options here. Now, what that does is by default, we have it on auto. And what that means is if you add an add to cart button to your form, then it will automatically hide the WooCommerce one so that you don't get two of them on the page. Or you can override that. You can just say hide or show. But usually you just want to leave that on auto. Then WS Form will automatically adjust the layout for you. Same with the quantity and same with variation price. And just now we spoke about the add to cart button being disabled when the form is not valid. There's actually a couple of ways that you can do that. So by default, if the form is not valid, we will disable the add to cart button. So that's the behavior that we saw on that page. But you can also do show invalid feedback. So what that will do is if I click on that and I were to click on the add to cart button, rather than adding it to the cart, it will then highlight all the invalid fields, just like a normal field. Like, first name is required, last name is required. So you've got a couple of different options there.
That's a nice option. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good when you've got quite a complex form, maybe with some calculations and stuff, and they haven't entered a number in somewhere. And if you have a multi-step form, it will actually move to the tab where that error is and focus on that field to make it super easy for the user. This one you probably just want to leave enabled, the clear hidden fields. And what that does is when the form is submitted, if a field has been hidden, maybe with some conditional logic, we clear those fields before they're added to the cart. Just in case someone fills something out, it's then hidden, and then when it's submitted to the cart, we don't want to see that anymore. So the clear hidden fields will just clear everything and keep everything neat and tidy for you. Below that, we've got some cart options, and you can actually make a item editable. So what we mean by that is, let's say you filled out your name on a product and you've added it to a cart. You can then actually click on the item in the cart and it will take you back to the product, and you can actually edit what you put in there. So it makes it editable. So you can make changes to it basically after you've added it to the cart.
Right. That's neat.
We also have the option to allow negative values. Not a lot of people use this, but you could, for example, have a checkbox which would take $10 off the price of the product if you wanted to. So that's what this allow negative does. We disable that by default just for security reasons and to stop people, trying to get a negative value on a product. But if you do want to adjust prices in a negative way, you can enable that feature. And then at the bottom here, we've got run WS Form actions. And we'll probably come on to that in a little bit. But on forms, you may recall we have an action section. And the actions are anything that runs with it whenever the form is saved or submitted. Now, in WooCommerce, that's a bit different because we don't want those to run until the customer's paid and an order's been placed.
Right.
So when you're creating an action, let's just say, for example, we wanted to add it to Google Sheets. So we want to copy everything that's on the form. We're going to put that into a Google Sheet. You'll notice at the bottom of that action, we can now configure, because we've got the WooCommerce add-on installed, we can choose when that action is going to run. So when an order goes through on WooCommerce, typically it will be in, pending payment or processing or something like that. So I could say I only want it to be pushed to Google Sheets once the order status goes to completed. So it gives you really granular control over when those actions actually run. And that can stump people sometimes because they think the actions are just going to run when you add it to the cart, but it actually runs when you actually place the order and it goes through. So those are the WooCommerce options that we have. So let's talk now about how you adjust prices on a product. It's fairly straightforward. So let's go to let's add another product, and we'll put another. No, we've got lots of test products today.
Easy to find at least and delete later.
Yeah, we'll use this calculation template here. Hopefully this will add properly. Yeah, there we go. And what we're going to do on that, let's just put a base price on that of say $100. We'll publish that product. And then we'll view that product. Okay, so what we've got here is a subtotal, and that's the base price that I just put on that product. We've got the option price here, which is everything on that form, all of these price fields, and then we've got the total. So anything I add here is going to get added to the options at the bottom. And we've also got a price range slider there. And you can see that these prices are adjusting.
Yeah.
And then when I click on add to cart, it would then add that amount. So let's have a look and see how that's done. So we'll go into WS Form here and we'll edit that form. It's pretty straightforward. So what it does is it uses our standard e-commerce fields that we have. So if you were just to build a form, maybe to charge someone $10 for a t-shirt, and you had a Stripe checkout feature on there, then you're actually using our e-commerce fields there. When it's applied to a WooCommerce product, the total price of the fields on that form get added to the regular price of the product or the sale price of the product, whatever whichever you're using. So the fields that we're using here, we've got just a regular price field, and the settings on this are things like you can set a default value. You're going to change the alignment, the style, and everything else on that. So all the usual stuff you expect to see on our sidebar. Price checkboxes, they're much like a regular checkbox, except that they have a price column on them. So you can just put the price in there, choose the name of the product, and then whichever ones they check on will then get added to the price of the product. Same with selects. Again, it's using our data grid to select product names and prices.
Yep.
And the same with the price. This is a price range slider. So on this one, you can actually set a minimum and a maximum.
0 to 20 in this case, yeah.
Yeah, and you can choose your step it. If you want to step it by 1 cent, you can do that. So you would set the step to 0.01. But that will default to a step of 1 by default. So it'll go from 0 to 20 in steps of 1. Below that, we've then got some fields which are a little bit more specific to WooCommerce. So if we go back to the toolbox, we'll scroll down here, and you'll notice that we've got a WooCommerce section.
Yep.
So what WS Form gives you is a bunch of fields that you can add to your form that behave like WooCommerce fields. So if I wanted to add an add to cart button, you'll see we've got one here. I can place that anywhere on that form that I want. I can resize it. I can put it, at the top of the product if I want to, put it anywhere I want. So you get much more control over the layout that's shown on that product page. You've also got things like a quantity field. So you see we've got quantity here. Now, quantity, you only have one of them. That's why that one's blocked out.
Grayed out.
Because obviously you only want one quantity field to be able to enter in. But the add to cart, you can add multiple of those if you want to.
Does it have the same ID if you add multiple carts? So will it?
No, they're separate. So you can actually interact with those
separately.
Individually,
right.
If you want to. Yeah. So there's no clashing with IDs going on there. So that's an example of basically pulling e-commerce fields in, and then that's ultimately what that's going to look like. So one thing to bear in mind with the WooCommerce extension is that the form that's used on the product will always be the published version. So if you make any changes to the form, let's just perhaps move the add to cart up here just for a bit of fun. Make it nice and wide. If I then if I actually go to that test product and refresh it, you'll notice that nothing has changed. So any changes you make, you're going to want to click the publish button at the top. And then when you go back to your product, it will then adjust it. Yeah. And like I said, we can add another add to cart down here, wherever you want. Hit publish. And there you go.
Nice.
Yeah, so it gives you a lot of code. And you'll notice the regular add to cart has been hidden because we have an add to cart on that form. All right, so now there may be an instance where perhaps you've got a number field on there, and perhaps you're doing some calculation in that you want the user to see, but you don't want that to actually be added to the cart. So what you can do is if you edit that number field and you scroll down on the basic tab, you'll see that there's a checkbox for exclude from WooCommerce cart and orders. So if you check that, and we'll save and close that and publish it, then the product itself will have that field on there so that they can see what's going on, maybe a figure in there. But when that's added to the cart, you're not actually going to see that number field being brought across.
Right.
So that gives you granular control over what actual fields are shown on the cart itself. When the order's placed, this metadata here is then migrated across to the order, so it will inherit all the way through. So that number field will not appear. So that that can be useful for if you've got a range slider, or a select drop down that's being used for other calculations below, but you don't want it to appear here. Then that's what you can use that feature for. Let's have a quick talk about that data grid column mapping I was talking about. So let's go to a checkbox, and this is the same for checkbox, radios, and select fields as well. So if we go to the checkboxes here, we've got 3 options, and we've got a price of 1, 2, and 3.
Yep.
Now you may recall from one of the earlier videos, on a checkbox you would have a value and a label. So the value is what's actually submitted, the label is what's shown to the user. So with the WooCommerce extension, there's an additional mapping here. So you've got the label, which is shown to the user. There's the value, which is actually the value that would be added to a submission. But down here, you've got the WooCommerce cart here. And that determines what will actually appear in the cart. So this text here, right here.
Got it. Yep.
Is determined by that particular column. So if we expand this out, you'll see how that works. So you've got product and price, and we would be choosing product here. So it's going to show option 1 if we chose option 1 because we've got that mapped to product here.
Yeah.
The price that's added is determined by this price mapping here. So that's going to use this column. So basically, you can have any number of columns, and you can choose which columns do what. You could even have, we do have some customers who, on the form, they just wanted to say option 1, 2, 3, but in the cart, they wanted to show something different, maybe a little bit more explanation. So you can actually add another row.
You could just add another row, right?
Yeah,
or
this
column.
Would be, cart detail or whatever.
And then you can fill that up with whatever you like. Yeah.
Yeah, and then assign that here. So it's very flexible in terms of how that works. So that's the column mapping and how that part of it works. So we've done, running actions. So let's have a look at that T-shirt demo, and we'll just show how some of that more complex stuff is done on that particular product. Let me just see here. Let's go to the knowledge base, and I'll show you how that's put together. I'm going to zoom in a bit so you can see. It's probably the easiest way of doing this.
Yep,
so this is a knowledge base tutorial we have that talks through how that T-shirt demo is done. And gives some examples on the JavaScript of how to do that. So this is it's a bit more of a cut down example. I don't have the text overlay and stuff on this one, but you can see how when I click on light blue, dark gray, it's actually changing the color of how that T-shirt works. So in order to do this, you're going to need the WS Form Pro WordPress plugin. You're going to need our product add-on extension. So the extension is purchased through WooCommerce.com. And there are links to this all the way through this tutorial. And then we provide a couple of sample files here you can actually download. So this is the actual T-shirt SVG file, which would be used for the product image. And then this is actually the form file that does all the work. So you can download these and have a play around with them. So let's have a quick talk about that SVG file and how that works. It's pretty straightforward. And if you can get into SVG format, it's actually quite an interesting format for playing around with images and manipulating images. So there's a JPEG layer at the background, which is just a regular T-shirt image. And then over that, we then have a screen layer. And that's where we apply a color to that screen layer. And because it's a screen layer, you can see the T-shirt through it, but it makes it look like we're changing the color of the T-shirt. And then on top of that, we then have a logo. And that can be any logo you want. You could remove it if you wanted to just have a plain T-shirt. And you can play around with that SVG file to make that work. Now, in order to use SVGs in WordPress, you actually have to enable support for it. And there is a plugin called SVG Support, and there's a link to it in this knowledge base article that you can install. And that will enable you to upload SVGs into the media library and then assign those to the product. So that's pretty straightforward. So in this demo, first thing we do is we create a form. And you'll notice that we have created a color picker, which is this part here. That's just a regular color picker. And then we've got some buttons, and we've set the value of those buttons to different hex values that are used to determine the color. Then we create a product, very much like I showed before, and we upload that tshirt.svg file as the product image. And then we then assign the form that we've created to that product. So you're going to get this appearing in WooCommerce. And you can just use the T-shirt JSON file that we provide. You don't have to build that form. You can just use the one that we've provided. So then we test that, make sure that the form's working. But now we want to make sure that everything is interactive. So the way we do that is with some conditional logic. And this is similar to what I showed earlier. But what we're doing is we're adding in a condition, and we're saying if that T-shirt color picker, which is the actual color field, and we're going to do that on input. Now, what on input does is whenever that field changes, either by somebody clicking on it and dragging it, or pasting a value in there, or typing a value in there, you're going to get an on input event occur. And that's going to basically trigger this condition. And then the then statement on that will then run some JavaScript, which is this JavaScript here. And this may look a little bit complicated, but essentially what we're doing is within that SVG, there's a class called WSF T-shirt screen.
Right.
And so we're saying, okay, use that. And we'd like to set some CSS on that element there. And we're going to change the fill color to be the value of field, in this case, 612.
Yeah, whatever. Yep.
But that would be the ID of your color picker. And we're applying a mixed blend mode on that of multiply, which kind of gives you like a screen effect on that particular fill. So that JavaScript is running whenever that changes. So when we change that color, then it's then modifying that particular layer in that SVG. And that's how you get that effect.
That's so neat.
So that's how that bit works. And then the commerce text stuff, that is done using that likeness less than or greater than in that conditional logic. So again, we're saying if the lightness is less than 50% of that pick a T-shirt color, then we're going to run one of two different things. So again, we're looking at the WSF T-shirt logo commerce element within that SVG, and we're going to set it to white if it's dark. If it's light, we then set it to dark. So that's basically if, then, and else. So the then is the white and the else is the dark. And that's how you get that effect with the commerce changing from light to dark. Now that's so just one example. That could be any logo that you want on that T-shirt, but it's just it gives you an idea of how to make a product image a bit more dynamic and a bit more fun. These buttons here are very simple. When you just click on that, all we're doing is saying, if that button is clicked, set the value of this color field to a certain hex value. That's
right, and all the JavaScript picks that up in the way that you just
described. Exactly. Yeah, and that's why we use events in WS Form, so that when something else interacts with a field, you get a daisy chain effect, and all the other conditional logic then runs nicely. So if we were just to change that value but not trigger an event on it, it wouldn't run that other conditional logic. But because we are changing the value and WS Form is saying, okay, that value has changed, there's been an input event, it then runs that other conditional logic, which then changes the color on the T-shirt. So you get that daisy chain effect happening. So yeah, it's a little bit difficult to explain it, but if you follow
that's
this tutorial,
perfect. And also, you can imagine going in all sorts of directions with that.
Yeah,
exactly.
It
doesn't have to be color, it could be all sorts of different things. But basically, the point is you've got options. Nice.
Yeah. And you can use all the features of WS Form to do it. So you can create a pizza select.
Rob Cairns, if you are still watching this, eat your heart out, mate.
So again, it's just a regular variation product in WooCommerce, and then we're using conditional logic to say, okay, if somebody clicks on that checkbox, then enable the cheese layer. If someone clicks on the basil layer, then enable the basil layer. So this is really
like to use the cheese layer in all manner of parts of my life.
Exactly.
Be as cheesy as possible.
Yeah. So this is basically just enabling layers in that SVG file over here to simulate what the pizza is going to look like. And this is just a price checkbox, is all this is. So as you click on things, you'll notice the total changing at the bottom right-hand side. And that's just being done based upon the price that's set for those particular checkboxes. I think we limit it to 7 toppings.
Yeah. Can I ask you a question about this? First
Yeah.
thing, how do you get the icon next to the text? Is that in WS Form?
Yeah, so that's actually when you create a checkbox. I'll show you how that's done. So let's come out of here, and we'll go down to the e-commerce section, and we'll drag price checkbox over here, and we'll then open that up. Now you'll notice first of all that which one was I on? There we go. So you'll notice that we have 3 columns here, right?
Yep.
So it's not just one big long list. So that's actually done by using the layout setting here. So you can go to horizontal or grid. So on grid, it gives you very granular control over how those checkboxes are laid out. You can actually do it by breakpoint. So I can say on mobile device, I maybe want to do full width. On a medium-sized screen, I maybe want to have 3 columns, for example.
Yeah.
Or you can just do horizontal, and it'll just put them left to right. But the grid is the one you really want to use because it just looks a lot better. And then if we go to the checkboxes and we open that up, basically in the label here, you'll notice when I hover over that, there's a little icon here.
Oh, yeah.
And I can insert an image.
Oh, I never knew
and
that.
if you click on that, it will open up the media library, and then you can upload your icons up to the media library and then inject those in. And all it does, so our labels enable you to put HTML in them.
Yeah.
Provided you have permissions in WordPress to be able to do that. There's a little commonly unknown setting in WordPress as to whether an admin user has the permission to inject HTML into things. So provided you have that permission, you're able to do this. But it essentially just puts an image tag in there.
Right.
And, it could be an image tag. It could be any kind of HTML that you want. So you could style text. And that's how we get that effect there. So it's
That's
literally just
Can I ask another question?
Yes.
You've got 7 as the choice in that checkbox.
Mm-hmm.
How does it? So let's say I pick 8. How does it decide what is just? How does it decide? Okay, I've got to replace the one that we've just checked. How does it know what to drop?
It doesn't. So it just stops you from clicking on it.
Got it.
Uncheck one first, and then check another one. Yeah.
Right.
I remember going through that logic when we wrote the max code for a checkbox. Like, do we disable the first one they clicked on? No, this is just
exactly that. That was what I was thinking. Yeah, because you could end up in all sorts of fun things. That would be quite interesting. And then I have another question.
Yeah.
But in order to do that, you've got to click the Add to Cart button.
Yes.
And I want to know how you get the image that's correct for the pizza.
That we haven't implemented on this demo.
Oh, okay. Good.
Yeah.
Right, so you would just so happen then in that case that the pizza I chose was the same as the one in the image.
Yeah.
I just basically put everything on. Okay, got it. Right.
Yeah, you just went full on.
Some clever logic. How did you build the picture on the fly? Okay.
Yeah, it would be cool to be able to do that, but it's because all the dynamic stuff with the pizza itself occurs on this page, then it's kind of impossible to do that on the next step. So the next step would just be everything, because
it was a
normal
coincidence. Yeah, nice.
Exactly. Yeah. There's a lot of on this particular demo. There's a lot of conditional logic going on with it to switch things on and off. But you can see how you can.
Yeah, this is such a great demo for understanding what's possible. The fact that you can just put things on top of other things, and images is a great way to do that. But you can imagine, I don't know, you're selling car parts or something. You can imagine building up or all sorts of different services where you just need to layer things on top of other things. Perfect.
And these two are kind of extreme examples. A lot of people are just doing some basic stuff. Like, for example, you may want to ask a user to upload a file as part of the product they're purchasing. So maybe they're personalizing a mug and you want the image of the mug, then you can actually use that to upload it. You can even put Google Maps on products. So if you want someone to be able to choose a location,
like a delivery spot.
Yeah, it could be, or it could be, sometimes you buy those kind of custom maps that people produce.
Yep.
You can actually use this to do that and determine where they want that, and then that gets stored on the cart itself. You can do product variations. So let's click on that one. I'll show you repeaters as well. So this is just showing that you can put it on a variation product. So you'll notice that the subtotal here, so subtotal is the WooCommerce product price, that's changing when I change different variations. So everything is changing dynamically when you're playing around with that.
Got it. Yeah, neat. So it's a bigger thing. You need to be charged more money, basically, in this case.
Yeah. You can also do repeaters as well. So if you want to have a repeatable section on here, and maybe you want to have a line of text, and you want them to be able to choose a color, and then give them the option of adding another line of text, they can do that within here as well. So repeaters work within the WooCommerce products too. Donate, we've done. Conditional Logic, we've done. Color swatches, this is just a very simple example of how you can do color swatches. So this is just basically a radio that's styled to look like a square with a color on it. That's all explained in our knowledge base. So if you want to have a look at that, you can see how that works. And then the last thing that we wanted to go through was all the variables that we have for this particular feature, the WooCommerce extension.
Strap in.
It's quite expensive, so but we'll scroll down here. I don't think there's anything else that we've missed. But if you really want to get into this, have a look at this documentation, because this just covers everything that we do with the extension, all the custom field types, all the e-commerce fields that you can use to customize product pricing. We've got all the settings in here that show you, we were going through how to exclude from the WooCommerce cart and orders, configuring those products. Just one thing I wanted to show quickly that I forgot. Let's just go back to a product. We'll go to that last product that we created. There's actually two ways of determining how the form is configured. So you can actually do it at a form level, which is what we're doing here. You'll see here the configuration source is set to form settings. So that's going to use that the settings that we showed in form settings Woo. But you can actually do it, if you want to override that, you can click on custom settings here, and it will actually enable you to override those settings at a product level. So if you've assigned a form...
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so if you've assigned it to, say, 400 products, but on one of them, if you want to do something slightly different, then you can click custom settings and override what you've got set up on a product level. Sorry, on a form level.
If you leave something blank, so say in the case there you've got a price prefix, will let's say you've got a category assigned to those 400 products. You want this one to be separate, but you're happy for the price and the suffix, the prefix and the suffix. If you leave them blank, will they take it from the original?
No, it'll literally be blank here.
Okay, you've got to fill it out in its entirety. Got it. Right.
Yeah. So that enables you to override it with a blank value.
Got it.
Otherwise, it would inherit from.
That would be somewhat pointless. Yeah, good point.
So we just override that. So that's how you set that up. So let's go back to this documentation here. And so what you want to do, if you go right to the bottom of this, it's quite a long list.
Oh boy.
Go to form variables here. So this gives you examples of where you can use WS Form variables on your form. Now, some of them can actually be used on the page itself. So if you wanted to use the product price in a calculation, for example, then you can actually use those. So there's an example of that here. Let me make this a bit bigger so you can see it. So this is an example of using our calculation, and that's pulling out the WooCommerce price. That's the price of the WooCommerce product, and we're multiplying that by 0.5. So if we set the WooCommerce product price to 10, that would output 5, obviously. And you can use that in calculations. So maybe if you've got a variation product which goes from, say, 1 to 5, and you want that to adjust other prices on the product itself, you can use these calculations to do that. If you have a look at our knowledge base and just type in calculated fields, you can see some examples of how calculations actually work. And I think we covered that in our dynamic.
Yeah, we did. And it gets incredibly dense, doesn't it? You can really do almost anything if you prepare.
Yeah. Like mortgage calculators and all kinds of stuff.
Oh, that's right. Because on the first episode, you got one of those wrong, didn't you, or something? And it's like, I remember now.
So this, this is basically what it's saying is you can use variables that relate to the product that it's on in your calculations. So you can see all the different ones that you can use here. So you've got just a regular price that shows it without a currency. This actually returns it in a floating point format, which is good for calculations in things like JavaScript and things like You've also got the regular price, and what will happen is if you put a sale price on a product, let's say the regular price is $10, the sale price is $5, then this would be $5. This would be 10 because this is the regular price of the product. So if you want to refer back to the regular price, you can do so. And then we've got price total. So this is actually the WooCommerce product price plus the price on the form itself. And then if you carry on down, we've then got action variables as well. So what action variables are? These are variables that you would use in things like send email, or maybe pushing some data to a third party, or using it, I don't know, in some custom code that you're running on a third party in a webhook. But you've got everything here from the WooCommerce order ID, the order number, the status, the pricing. Below that, you've got details about the user. So if the user was logged in when they placed the order, this is their user ID, their first name, last name, email. You've also got all the billing information that they've typed in available to you, and all the shipping information available to you as well. So that's useful. If you're pushing this data from an order into a CDN, you can actually use WS Form to do that. So you don't need a WooCommerce extension for pushing that data to a third party.
Neat.
You can use any of the WS Form integrations we have with this data, and you just need one plugin to do it. So there you go.
That is truly a lot, considering it's just an add-on to, you know, we've been through the other 4 episodes, all of the other bits and pieces that it can do. You mentioned at the front of this episode that you buy this from Woo, right? It's not available on the WS Form website.
Right? So
proclivity
that's actually
of selling things on top of Woo.
Yeah, so basically it's one of the extensions in the Woo marketplace. We do that for a number of reasons. First of all, it ensures that our code adheres to all the conventions that they have around WooCommerce. So when we submit this to the WooCommerce extension, it actually goes through a vetting process to make sure that they're happy that it's going to work well with Woo. It also then becomes part of your upgrades for WooCommerce. So WooCommerce has its own kind of micro licensing environment. So you have a license for any of your other extensions that you have with Woo. They all become part of this. So you're able to see, you know, if the license is about to expire, you can see that all within your WooCommerce account itself. So this is we keep it just within Woo, because if people are looking for this type of functionality and they're doing a search for it, it's going to appear in the WooCommerce search on this page. So it's actually, compared to some of the extensions, a lot cheaper than the other ones as well. So we actually bill it at $49 a year.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so $4 and peculiar amount, isn't it? $4.09 a month, or you know, go for the whole year, as it were. $49 for all of that functionality. Mark, it just occurs to me that we haven't ever talked about the pricing of the whole panoply of stuff that you do. Do you want to just get into that quickly? We've got a couple of minutes left. How does the so you find that on Woo. I will link to that in the show notes to this episode. To anybody who's listening to this after the fact, go to the show notes and on wpbuilds.com, and here's the pricing for WS Form in general. It starts, well, you go through it. You've probably got a picture.
So we've got 3 flavors of WS Form. We call them editions. You've got the personal edition, which is $59 a year. And that basically is for a one-site license. And if there's any of the integrations that you want, you can just buy those a la carte. So you don't have to buy all of them. You can just say, if I want MailChimp, for example, you can buy that one. I think it's $29 a year. So that's great for a single site where you've just got the base product. If you want to do integration, you can add that on if you want to. Then you've got the freelance edition. That's $149 a year. That gives you a license so you can run WS Form on 5 sites. But it also includes a number of the add-ons. So some of the more popular add-ons come with that particular version. So everything from Amazon S3 and Google Drive and Dropbox for actually pushing file uploads. And you've got some popular integrations like MailChimp and MailerLite and things like that. And then the agency edition, this is basically everything but the WooCommerce extension. So you get unlimited sites, You get our agency level support, so you kind of higher up the queue when we get the support tickets in. And that includes every integration that we have. So if we add any other integrations to WS Form, you get those automatically when we add those. So yeah, it's around 70 integrations in total, and that's all included with the agency edition. So it's great value. And with your 20% off from WP Builds, that brings it down to about $200 a year. So
yeah. So yeah, that was at the beginning. Coupon code WP Builds, I think it was.
Yep.
You can always use that, but it brings it down to roughly $200, and that gives you unlimited sites. So if you're an agent, yeah, there you go. Look,
there you go.
No Nathan this time as well. Yes.
There is.
Oh dear. I spoke too soon. I popped off. 20% off. The link is there, and the coupon code is obviously there. And just before we go, Mark, first of all, thank you for that. That was great. No questions coming in, so either you explained it very well or nobody's watching. You decide.
Probably nobody's watching.
Yeah. The other thing is, we're back next week, and you're going to talk about the topic which nobody seems to be able to ignore at the moment, which is AI in forms. If I'm right, you were one of the early movers with AI in anything, frankly.
Yep.
You'd got it right in WS Form. So I'm curious as to how that goes, because, in my head, I'm struggling to imagine how a form might integrate with AI, but let's find out.
You'll
Is
see.
it next week we're doing that? I can't remember, but
I think so. Yeah.
We'll put the date on the wpbuilds.com website. And one last little tiny treat just before we go. So this is where I live. Go on, do it, because it's funny.
I also live there too.
That's hysterical.
We even got his mic.
Yeah. That's you try.
I can't move mine.
No, exactly. That's hysterical. And look, there is a slight variation. Mine moves.
Yeah, I can't interact with my environment.
Oh, that's so funny. That's brilliant. All right, well, we'll be back next week. Thank you so much for joining us. There were a few people watching live, but there's nobody putting. Oh, look, there you go, John Hussey. Thank you so much. He is watching live. Great episode, guys. Well, thank you so much.
Great.
Yeah, I mean, maybe sometimes there is no commentary. That's just the way it
People
goes.
just don't know what they're missing.
They don't know what that is. I want to get a screenshot of that. Can you get a screenshot of that? Because that's hysterical.
Yeah, let me just grab it.
And then send it to me. That would be so funny. Right, I'm going to end this show. Have you got it?
Yep, I got it.
See you next week. Take it easy, Mark. Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.